What if you decided at the age of 39 that you've been in the corporate world for a long time and maybe you're frustrated and things aren't going the way you want it. And you've always said to yourself, man, I want to write. I want to write a book. I know I can do it, but you doubt yourself. And all of a sudden, one night you drive through a snowstorm and you go to a book signing with one of your favorite authors and you pose that question, am I too old to go down this path? And that author stops mid-signature, looks at you and says, the world needs what you have. Wow, isn't that empowering? I got so excited when I heard that. And so that's why I have a conversation today with Matt Scott, author of the new book, The Ayatollah Takedown. It is the third in a series that he wrote starting at 39. And he followed his passion. He's still in the corporate world. And what's fascinating about this conversation, I posed to him some questions about tactically, how does he do this? To help those of you who are listening, who are in charge of projects or businesses, how do you make sure that you're dedicating the time? How do you see the end of what you're trying to accomplish and work your way through it and fight through the tough times? Well, I asked him that question. And what was interesting was he shares what he learned and executed in the corporate world, how that helped his writing, and then more importantly, what he learned from his writing, how it influenced his corporate business career as well. Fascinating conversation. I'm so excited. I cannot wait to let you hear Matt Scott, author, share all of this great information with you. So let's dive into today's episode of You're in Charge, Now What? With author Matt Scott. All right. So Matt, I'm really excited for you to be here. I love talking to creative people, love talking. I've spoken to, a lot of different authors about their journeys. So I want to jump right in, I guess, right at the beginning, because one of the things when I was doing research and reading your biography, listening to some of the other interviews you've done with other podcasters, it's this idea that you were in your career. Yeah. You were chugging along, successfully in business. And all of a sudden, later in life, or 40-ish later in life, you say, hey, I want to start writing a book. And I remember you said you had an interaction with an author. I think it was David Baldacci.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you were saying, should I do this or am I too old? Tell me that story and why at that age, what was the trigger for you to say, yeah, I think I want to write a book?
Well, he said I was chugging along in my career. And I think at that point in time, I think I would correct the word and just say just, slugging along. It was, I was in a pretty, I'll just go ahead and say a pretty dark place in my career. I was just really, my career kind of stalled out in the corporate world. I was getting really pissed off about, just not going anywhere and not achieving the type of or the level of success that I wanted in terms of promotions and bonuses and things like that. So I didn't get into reading really. I mean, until I was probably 23 or 24 because early on in college and high school, I hated it. I mean, they just made us read such so-called classics. I mean, The Old Man and the Sea and Mice and Men were okay, but books like The Good Earth and Watership Down, I absolutely hate it. I absolutely hate it. So when Dan Brown came out with the Da Vinci Code, I mean, I got caught up in the.
I love that book. That book.
I got caught up in all the hype, and that was well worth it. So I read all his books, and then I ran into a guy on an elevator at work and we were talking about spy novels. He's like, you know what? You need to check out Vince Flynn. I was like, really? And now I've never seen that guy before, never seen him again. But right after work, I think it was Act of Treason and hooked me immediately. So I started buying all of Vince Flynn's books, we're buying the day they came out. Then I kind of expanded into Brad Thor, Brad Taylor, and Jack Carr, and Joel Rosenberg. So all of this kind of, I started kind of absorbing, the knowledge, and not only of, what they were writing, but, how they were doing it, how they were formulating plots, how they were developing characters, how they would weave in and out. And I always had kind of a creative side. I went to the college that I went to, Amon Sydney College, was very heavy on writing, but it was, more so on essays and things like that. And
Right.
I studied under General Sam Wilson, who used to be the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency. So he kind of got me hooked on the spy part of it. So
Right.
I just kind of started thinking, about, could I do it? I'd always been kind of good at writing greeting cards, but writing a novel is, something totally different. So I always wanted to do a book about Iran, simply because I thought it was a subject matter that was not well touched on by the literary world in terms of fiction.
Hmm.
And I'd always been, David Baldacci was one of the novelists that I read, and I drove through a snowstorm from Charlotte to Williamsburg, Virginia, and he was on tour, and I was 39 at the time, and I went up to him and I asked him, I said, I'm 39, I've got an idea for a novel. Is 39 too old to write a novel? And I kid you not, he stopped mid signature, looked up at me and said, "Oh hell no, the industry can use some good young writers." Now I didn't know if I should be happier that this legendary man was telling me to go forth with my mythic destiny, or that he thought that 39 was still considered young. But
Right.
either way, I went home and started on it, and I really pushed myself, because I really started listening to a lot of motivational speeches from guys like Les Brown. His "It's
Right.
Possible" speech was very good. Tom Bayou, and his his uh, his album, I can't remember the name of it, but he's got the motivation channel on YouTube, and
Yes.
he was really good. And Mel Robbins, I read a lot of her stuff, so all that kind of really just propelled me and said, you've got this gift. It's time to make the best of it, and let's see what it can do. Now, will it pan out, the way that I want it to, the way,
Hmm.
I guess all writers dream? I don't
Right.
know, but it was one of those things that I think I would have regretted not doing if I was on my deathbed. So I wanted to make sure that this was something that I went forward with.
I love that story. And you mentioned some of my favorite writers as well, and similar journey just to falling into that genre. You know,
Hmm.
I think Vince Flynn was one of the first ones, and then it was Brad Thor, and then Simon Gervais, and all of these
Hmm.
other ones, and Jack Carr, and he has a new one
Yeah.
coming out, and it was this intrigue. You know, my wife always says I love the Jason Bourne movies, and there's
Yeah.
always that intrigue behind the scenes. But I agree with you. I really liked a lot of their writing. It reminded me. I was always a big Stephen King fan
Hmm.
early on in my life. What I always loved is he'd take all these disparate characters and tell their stories, and somehow they would all move together until they started interacting. And to
Right.
your point, a lot of those writers did as well, where they had that combination of intrigue, dialogue, and suspense to leave you hanging and want to read more, and then be,
Right.
well, where's the next one? So let's unpack that a little bit. So
Okay.
here you are, you say you're 39, and you get the blessing from a fantastic writer, and you
Yeah.
go back, and I'm sure there were times where the initial surge of I'm going to write this, and that excitement carried you through probably that first whatever time frame,
Hmm.
just like a lot of my audience who are leaders, and they're taking on teams or leading projects. There's that initial surge where everyone's behind it and everyone's enthusiastic, until the reality of the day to day comes into your life, and then you have to sort of fight through I don't want to say drudgery of writing, but the job of writing, I guess it would
Sure.
be. So
Sure.
for you, how did you create a routine about that, or set that up? Was it like I had outlines and did it, or was it specific times a day? Walk me through that from a tactical standpoint, what you did.
Yeah, for me. It was just about committing to the process, and
Hmm.
I remember Tom Bayou, one of his albums. He said, "I've heard that hell is going going to the next, the afterlife, and looking at yourself and realizing you're not even a shadow of what you're supposed to be, and
Mm.
heaven is going to that place and seeing that you made it." So that really kind of stayed with me. So that kind of put the commitment in myself and said, if I've got to do this, if
Right.
I'm going to do this, I've got to do it right, and I
Mm-hmm.
can't slack off, and I've got to commit to the process. So my process is, you got pantsers and you got outliners. I'm a little bit, in between. I like to do an outline, and it's more of just a roadmap than anything else. And I'll
Right.
say like chapter 14 will be like, you know, Glenn goes to see Farad or something like that. And then when comes time to write that chapter, I let my creative juices kind of unfold. Now, my initial outline is going to be about 2/3 of the novel, and at that time, I kind of look at it, I'm like, oh my god, I've only got 2/3 of this. How am I going to get through it? So that's what pressure is kind of a good thing, and
Right.
it allows me to open up my creative juices and exercise it organically and kind of let things come to me, because one of the best things that's ever happened to me in the writing process is looking at a chapter, not knowing how I'm going to get out of a situation or get a character out of a situation, and then
Mm-hmm.
realizing during the process I figured out a way to do it. I mean,
Right.
that was a big confidence builder. But so I have my outline, and what I'll do is, I'll do the 8 to 5 thing. I'll come downstairs, I'll have dinner with my wife, I'll watch some TV, talk, play with the dogs, whatever. And then when she falls asleep around 9, depending on what kind of day she has, I'll come back upstairs and I'll write. And the first thing I'll do is I will reread what I wrote yesterday. And that's a good way for me to get the creative juices flowing. And I do
Mm-hmm.
some editing, not big, but small editing in there. And then I'll write the next chapter. Now my chapters can be anywhere between, I just call it on average about 1,500 words. If it's 700 words, maybe I'll go ahead and write the next chapter, but I
Right.
certainly won't write any more than 3,000 words a day. That's where I kind of get maxed out. So my number is usually around, it's between 1,000 and 1,500. And that's what, I think, if I remember right, that's what Stephen King said to do in his On Writing
Mm-hmm.
writing book. And that kind of worked well for me. And when I commit to writing just about a chapter a day, I can knock it out relatively quickly in terms of the first draft. And then I set the draft down for a couple of weeks. And then I go back and kind of rework it. And then I get into the process of working with my editor, and we start retooling it a little bit and say,
So
you
let
may want
me
to,
ask you a question on that, because
yeah,
my brain. Okay, so so you have that consistency of time
yep.
at night. That's your writing time. So
Mhm.
so if I write chapter, let's say I'm done with chapter 3 or chapter 4, put it down, come back for a week, but in that time frame, I've written 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Right? How do you not? Did what you come up with in chapter 8 or 9 now, like, do you go back and flesh out 3 a little more with that knowledge, or how do you not give away that, like, all of a sudden, because it's already, you've taken that character further down, how, when you go back and re-edit chapter 3, do you not give away what's going on, or how do you not let that influence you, if that makes sense?
Um, if I'm on chapter 8 and I realized that there was a change, there was a connection that I needed to make in chapter 3, yeah, I'll go
Okay.
ahead and I'll make sure that the connection's there. But as far as not giving away too much, I that part doesn't really enter into my mind a whole
Okay,
lot, simply
great.
because I know what my goal is at the end of chapter 3. My goal at the end of chapter 3 is to say Glenn went to see Farad, this happened, and then we're gonna leave it there, because you're not gonna write the whole book just from chapter 3. It's just gonna be this
Right.
little segment. So I know how I wanted it to begin. I know how I wanted it to end. Now, if the change that I needed to make required me to totally retool that chapter, that's one thing. But
Right.
I've been fortunate enough, knock wood, that when I've had to go back and retool things, that maybe I'll add a paragraph, or a
Right.
couple of
Okay.
paragraphs, but I've never had to totally
No,
retool
but that's what I meant.
anything
Not the
like
whole
that.
retool, but like you're fleshing some things out that you learn further on, because I guess the evolution of your character, but like you're saying, is you don't want to tip your hand, because that
No.
in and of itself, that chapter was a entity, but it might tweak on that. So how do you, again, again, like, because I've written some things, and
Mhm.
it's there's these ebbs and flows, but when you're writing at night during that time, whatever time frame that is,
Mhm.
If you're hitting a wall, do you stop or do you just sit there and not write and stay in the room? I mean, I had a friend who was a writer and that's what they did. They said, I'm here for 2 hours and some days I'll just walk around my office for 2 hours because I can't get it, but I don't leave because that fighting through those things is important as much as it is sitting down on those days where it just seems to flow out.
Um, well, I never stop in the middle of the chapter. That's one of my little OCD things. Like, if I start a chapter, I have to finish it.
Right.
In terms of hitting a wall, I think I've been fortunate in that respect. But I think, one of the things I said earlier was I go back and read the chapter I had before. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't just go in and write chapter 4. I have to read chapter 3 and then write chapter 4. So
Right.
it keeps the creative juices flowing.
It's like
And I like,
kickstarting your motor. Yeah. I
yeah,
got you.
exactly.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
or jumping rope before you start, running or lifting weights or whatever the case may be. So that part really helps. The other part is, because I have the outline and the roadmap, I know where I'm going, and I know what I want to accomplish, within that chapter. And the other part is you really have to know your characters.
Mm-hmm.
It's I like to think that a lot of times when people get stuck, in terms of a character, they don't have a clear idea, at least in my opinion, of where they want that character to go, or where they want that character, what they want to express out of that character in that given situation or chapter. I have to have um, a goal in mind of what I want that character to accomplish within that chapter before I move on. Now, a lot of it, if you're combining research with a location, like I did, a lot of times that research can help get you out of that situation,
Okay.
because if there's a secret door, out of this room that you didn't know about,
Right.
do some more of your research. I remember, when I was doing the Ayatollah takedown, there was a scenario where I was thinking about getting, my protagonists, Ben Thrasher and Beth Jenkins, into the Flak of Flak Castle, and I tried to do it. It just wasn't working, because there was no way to sneak in there without somebody knowing them.
Right.
So a lot of it is, sometimes you got to know your limits. If something's not working for you, it's not it doesn't do me a whole lot of good to just sit there and think, how can I get this through? How can I get this through? Maybe there's a reason why you can't get through it. And,
Right.
maybe you shouldn't be going that route. And that's not to say you can totally eliminate, that chapter, that situation, but you need to rethink how you do it, because there's
Now,
always a solution to me. There's always a way through it. It just may not be the way you're pushing yourself to do it. You just have to do it a little bit differently.
I love that because my brain, and I hope audience, I hope you're listening because there's, you know, what you just said there is so applicable to just life in general and business life in general of projects or things because
Right.
one, you got to know where you want to take your team or know where your project wants to get to. In this case, where your character wants to get to.
Yeah.
There always is a solution. If it gets tough, then you might just be going down the wrong path. You got to take a moment to regroup and re-go. But I I think that's so important. I think there a lot of people rush and
Yeah.
or get started without even knowing where I want to end up, and then they
Yeah.
get frustrated. So, to you, did that has this writing process, this process of writing, and this journey and path helped you in other aspects? I know you said at one time, you were in a dark place with your corporate career, but
Mm.
has this helped you in other aspects of your life to be able to have this sort of one OCD commitment of once I start something, I sort of have to finish it, but also thinking where you want to get to? Has that helped you?
I think well, there's two aspects to this. I think the corporate world helped me in writing, because you touched on something a minute ago. Process mapping, when was doing my green belt certification, process mapping really helped me in terms of
Mm-hmm.
writing, because it helped me plan out the plot.
Right.
You have to do step 1, step 2, step 3, and you can deviate, a little bit depending on what that particular character is doing, but you always have to have a start point and an end point. To me,
Mm-hmm.
if you're writing fiction, you really need to have at least a vague idea of how you want to finish it, because that'll help you push through and get through the chapters that maybe you're struggling with. So the process mapping really helped me in terms of writing. The writing piece has certainly helped me in the corporate world because as I'm writing something, the one thing a writer always has to keep in mind is he has to know his audience. So
Right.
if I'm giving a presentation to an executive vice president, he's going to want to see things differently than maybe someone that I directly report to. So
Right.
you have to know how to play to your audience and communicate to your audience in order to get the point across. So um, involving myself in and how the characters need to feel in a certain situation or how they were to react to a certain
Mhm.
situation has certainly helped me in the boardrooms of giving presentations and crafting emails because the communication has to be clear
Right.
and you have to know not only what you want to say and how you want to say it but how it's clear to the person you're writing to.
Yeah, that, as you were saying it, that's where my brain went because there's so many times people forget that audience. They
Yeah.
present it the way I did. Look at my report and look at all the pages and look at all the work I did. And that
Hmm.
person who's receiving just wants a summary sheet. Did we win? Did we lose this? And there is that disconnect of disappointment to say, but they didn't appreciate that. But that's not that audience where someone else needs that length. And I love that fact of
Yeah.
how it both helped both sides, especially the process. I'm a big process guy.
Right. Yeah.
Coach companies on it, teams on it, and that idea of mapping things out and be flexible that this could
Exactly. Yeah.
deviate. And this is interestingly enough, you're creating a living, breathing character
Hmm.
who may not be exactly the way I thought, or this situation, or, I'm learning more about this character. I think that's really interesting. So when you started, because this is the third, right? The
Hmm.
third book in a trilogy, when you,
Yep.
or well, put this way, not say trilogy, it's your third book in the series. Did it
Hmm.
start out with just if I get through this one, or there are people like Sylvester Stallone says he always saw Rocky as a three-part series, not beyond that. It was a three-part arc.
Yeah.
Was this just one, and then you said, "Oh, I actually have something. Let's put them in another situation," or was it I sort of had these stories and I just started at one?
I started at one,
Okay.
and it was because I'd never done this before. I didn't know
Hmm.
any authors. I'm not familiar at all with the publishing industry, so this was a total shot in the dark for me. So my idea was let's do one and see how it goes. Now, by the time I finished one and I edited it 6 million times, I had some vague ideas about what I could do with some of the other characters, but they were nothing more than just ideas.
Right.
And it turned out to be one of those situations where my agent called me and she said, the publisher that I ended up writing with for Speaking Volumes says they're interested, but they don't just want one; they want a series. And so they want to give you a 3 book deal. Now, what are your ideas for the other for the other 2 books? So I mean, I literally, had
Can
off
I
the
call you
top of my
back
head.
tomorrow? Give me a couple minutes here.
No, it wasn't. I mean, it was right then and there on the phone. Come up with, give me your other 2 ideas. So I just went with. Thankfully, I had those ideas. I wanted to do a book about, a connection between, the Nazis and the Iranians, and I thought let's take the 2 worst modern day regimes and see, what we could do with it. And that was a lot of fun to creatively to play with. And then the other one I thought, I was like, let's look at regime change. And as things have kind of progressed in real life, maybe I'll see it in my lifetime. I don't know, but it was time for me to really revisit the coup of the 53 coup of Mohammad Mossadegh and kind of bring things full circle. But the idea behind the first one was I wanted to take people on a journey through Iran, through the eyes of a character that I think that they can identify with, and then I took the 2 characters of Kirk Carruthers and Tom DeLange, and I kind of brought them together. So it kind of worked. It worked well. I was fortunate that it worked well, but it's when I developed the Ben Thrasher character in book 2, I really knew that I had something.
So why you're on? I know you touched on briefly, like there was, there And again, for most people, I would say they look at it, or they're they don't see the other side of it. They just get the information and they make their
Mm.
their decisions or judgments on what they're consuming. But why that versus there are a lot of in those Vince Flynn's and the Jack Cars
Mhm.
and everything there, but it sounds like you decided I want to show a different side of this or the other side of this. So why you're on?
I was really influenced, like I said earlier, I was really influenced by the Da Vinci Code and the way Dan Brown took people on a tour of Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was a really interesting way of, advancing the plot. So Iran to me was, there's so much more to it than just the Ayatollahs and the fish shakers that say, death to the USA.
Mm-hmm.
I just refuse to believe that everyone in Iran was like that.
Right.
And, so I really, during the course of my research, thankfully everybody's got a dash cam these days. YouTube was really helpful. I could
Mm-hmm.
see, interviews with real people and, explore some of the castles and things like that. But I just wanted to show the other side of it because only about 10% of that population really is about destroying America and Israel. A lot of
Right.
them are peaceful, and I just felt like that was an avenue that had not been explored. And for people from the West, especially the United States, we don't have official diplomatic relations with Iran, so nobody knows what it's like inside, and because of the state-run media, you don't get to see a lot. So
Exactly.
it was up to me to build that Kirk Carruthers character and take people on the journey so that they could see, it's not just camels and deserts and they're not operating on TVs that date back to 1957 or whatever the case may be. It's
Right.
a lot of cases it's a very modern country, and there's a lot of beauty to it that has been forgotten because of the Islamic Revolution from 79 and what's progressed after. So it was just I can't give you a solid answer other than the fact that it just grabbed hold of me when I saw a lot of the things that I saw when I was researching, and I just thought it was time to give readers a look inside of it, even if it's from my perspective.
No, but see, I what I really love and admire about that is you're right. What I liked about the Da Vinci Code was that idea of taking a tour, but it really fueled a lot of research into the history.
Right.
I think there was huge upticks in people looking at the paintings and going, what was there? And whether
Absolutely.
this was fiction or real, the fact of it made history exciting, very similar to, let's say, Lin-Manuel creating Hamilton on Broadway got
Right.
everyone really excited about the founding fathers in history again, but it gave people an avenue into it that wasn't boring. As you said earlier, when you first were reading it, the books were boring, but if there was a
Mhm.
good way into the story, you probably would have been excited. So this is an opportunity to show another side, because I agree with you. I don't think we tend to, even here in the States, everybody is seeing the 10% of the extremes,
Right.
right? And that's not the
Right.
reality of everybody, but we tend to think that, well, I guess that must be everybody. And so I really like that. I think that's great. So as you move through this, I do have to ask, so what are your folks that you work with in the corporate world think of you as this writer? Were they shocked a little bit? Were they
Yeah. Yeah.
impressed?
They're
What was
little
that like?
little of both. Little of
Mhm.
both. A lot of them were certainly happy when they figured out that I wrote them as small characters, and they were a little happy about that. Um, but yeah, I think shocked and happy is a good combination because I play things pretty close to the vest, and I didn't tell a whole lot of people. I mean, in fact, I didn't even tell my parents about it until I got news that I was going to be published. I surprised them at Christmas
Oh, that's
about it.
great.
Yeah, it was a good family moment that day. And but when I applied for I got out of the job that I had when I wrote book one, so I'm now in a different position with the Sealed Air Company. And they were, as it turns out, they were looking somebody that had writing credentials. And when I had, the first two books under my belt, I think the third one was still being edited when I
Mm-hmm.
had the interview. It helped kind of propel me. And even to this day, when they introduced me, on some of the team calls and stuff like that, they would put up, some information about my book, and everybody was just like, "Wow, how do you do it?" And
It is, yeah. I
it's
agree.
it's that's been a fun part of this experience. Is just kind of, I get treated as, a little bit of a celebrity, even though I'm not. But it's been kind of fun because, I was at my wife and I went down to Myrtle Beach last weekend, and I was just talking to somebody at the bar, and you just say, "Oh, you're a writer," and that everybody just kind of, their eyes kind of pop open,
Right.
because you don't run into a lot of them these
Well,
days.
it's
And
hard. It's hard because
very
I
hard.
was talking to Eric Bishop. He was
Yeah.
on my podcast from The Body Man, and we got talking about it. And he
Right.
goes, I have all these folders of ideas of half written this and half written that. And then you finally sit down, and as I said, I've co-written two, and I'm working on one myself. And
Hmm.
it's hard. And so once you get through that, it's pretty impressive, one, that you did it, and other people do look at you as, something that is a little unique because, as I said, so many people try it, give up, can't get through it. I found
Yeah.
co-writing was easier, at least the
Hmm.
first ones, because I had other people who were depending on you to get your piece done. And it wasn't
Yeah.
it wasn't it wasn't fiction, it was more business related. But
Right.
still, it was this idea of how to tell a story, because we've all read nonfiction books that are incredibly boring.
Yeah.
And it's that idea. And I read, Stephen King's book, and Anne Handley is another one about writing. And they were always
Hmm.
talking about, you got to tell a story. I don't care if it's you're teaching somebody how to do something, it still has to be engaging, and people always connect through stories. So I think
They
it's really
do.
good. So what's
They do.
next now? So we have the third one, it just came out. Are we already on a fourth one? Are you pivoting to a new series? Because I know sometimes some of the writers that we've all mentioned who are phenomenal also go, well, I'm done. I'm going to put X character on hold for a little bit. I'm going to go write something a different completely thing, and then maybe they come
Yeah.
back. Well, what's on the plate for you now?
TBD, to be honest with you, because the third book concludes my contract with Speaking Volumes. So I guess A will depend on whether or not they want to do some more
Mm-hmm.
novels with me. It will depend on, another publisher could come by and say, I think you've got some talent. What ideas do you have? The big thing on my plate right now is I'm going to BoucherCon in San Diego in the fall. So I really want to try and make some connections with some other writers. Like Tess Garrison is going to be there. I'm kind of excited to meet her.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and but as far as ideas go, once you're a writer, you're always a writer. So ideas are never too far from my mind. And I've got some
Right.
ideas that I'd like to do with maybe exploring North Korea the same way I did with Iran in this series.
Mm.
But especially the way North Korea seems to stay in the news a lot these days, I think that would be something that's kind of fun. But I haven't hammered out anything because I've been between working 8 to 5, writing, editing, and promoting. I need a break.
Right.
I need a
Well,
little bit of a break. But like I said, the Tom DeLange and Ben Thrasher and Kirk Carruthers, I always kind of see them standing around from time to time, thinking. So I always think about what I could do
they're
next
all
with them.
waiting
But
for you, going, hello, we'd like to be doing, we'd like to go back to work. Well, so then,
absolutely.
as we wrap up here, just for one other thing, because the one thing that I saw in your biography that I was really wanted to talk about, one of the things I want to talk about,
What's that?
and you said, I'm working at 8, 9 to 5, 8 to 5, whatever it is, and I'm, family, and I got this golden retriever wrangler. What like what no, at what no point did we talk about the puppies here? What is that about?
Okay, so I have to blame my publicist for that one. She those were her words. I thought it was pretty funny because we had my wife and I had a really good golden retriever. He was
Mm-hmm.
120 pounds. We named
Oh
him
my goodness.
Clarence because I'm such a fan of the It's a Wonderful Life movie. It's my favorite movie. So, and he was a really good dog, and and all of a sudden he just got sick within a week and just died.
Yeah.
So so you notice that I dedicated the book, part of the book, to him and my
Yeah.
wife. So when we got the puppies in November, and all I said to my wife was, I said once, she's like, what if we got two? I was like, well, that would work. I've never had two. And she totally took this thing and ran with it. I mean, found a breeder, found two that she liked. I mean, at that point, I was just a passenger, with the decision. And
This sounds like a conversation I have with my wife, because we had got a rescue. I was always adamant about no dogs, no dogs. I have a scar here where I got bit when I was young, and I was just afraid of dogs. And so finally they wore me down after years. And I finally said one day in the car, all right, whatever. And she's like, did he just say we can get a dog? And she showed me a picture. I was like, whatever. So we got a rescue. I think he was 4 when he got to us. And so a little older, but same thing. We had him for 3.5, 4 years. And then all of a sudden they had a lump. He got cancer over the course of a month, passed away, and we just haven't gotten another one yet. But my wife said, if we get one, we're going to get 2 so they can have company for each other. And half my brain's going, yeah, sure. And then the other half is going, I'm not sure about 2. And now for you going, whoa, now you have two puppies here.
It's been a lot. I'll say this. They're very fun. They're very sweet, and they do play with each other a lot. So, but having 2 has been it's been a lot of work. It's been a lot of cleanup. Keeping the house clean with 2, and they have torn my backyard up. I was so upset because I'm kind of like Hank Hill from King of the Hill when it comes to my backyard. I like having a nice lawn. I really do, and I worked hard at it. And these 2, they dug up the flower beds, dug holes. We had to replant sod. My backyard right now looks like an obstacle course because we put all this sod down, had all the fences, and now they found a way to chase each other. They're running around the fences. Well, guess what's that's created? It's basically created a dirt track around the fences, and so now I have to fix that. So it's been an adventure. And when Liz Malone, my publicist, came up with Wrangler, I was like, I couldn't really think of a better word. So I was like, let's just go with it, because that's how it feels a lot of days.
Yeah, we have a friend, a neighbor good friend of ours. They just got a dog. And so my dog, of course, before he passed, he was older. And so they bring their puppy over, and the puppy, and you could just see my dog, even at 7, was an older, grumpier, a little grumpy, but the fact of just, he never chewed on things. He'd chew on his bone, but he didn't rip things apart. This dog would come over, the puppy would come over, and just all of a sudden tear apart these things. There'd be like dead, play toys and ripped apart. And outside, same thing, jumping on. And I was going, I don't know if I have 2 like that. Same thing.
Yeah.
They're going to dig up everything. It's going to be pretty crazy. So
maybe
I'll have to steal Wrangler. I'll have to steal the Wrangler.
No problem. By all means. Yeah. It's been tough because every puppy experience is different. And this one has certainly been way different. And I've really got to evaluate whether or not I want to go through it again. But they're just puppies. They'll grow out of it.
They'll get there. They'll
fix
calm
it,
down.
but it's tough in the meantime.
Great. Well, listen, Matt, I really appreciate it. And what I really appreciated in our conversation today was how, because as I said, my audience is people who are out there, who are leading teams and building and in charge of projects. And what I really liked was there were a lot of tactical things that you did, and how you applied it to, your outside of just your writing and what you learned. So I thought that was really helpful. And I hope all of the audience is getting there. So at the end of every one, I just ask a couple questions. Sure. I know a lot of people do that, but since you are a writer, and I know you listed a lot of great writers that I respect too, but what are you reading right now for yourself that's inspiring you or helping you that you think would be a good recommendation for the audience?
I'm still getting through Meg Gardner and Michael Mann's Heat 2, because I was a big fan of the movie, and I'm a little late to the game on the book just because I've had so much going on. But that one's really good, and I'm looking forward to what's her name, TJ something. Never mind.
Is it
Drown
one? Drowning. TJ Winslow. TJ Winslow, is that TJ? Yeah, because I have from Falling. She wrote Falling.
Yeah, she did Falling. So I'm really looking forward to her next novel.
Drowning. Yeah, because she TJ Newman.
TJ Newman. Yeah. Sorry, Miss Newman. I forgot. I'm sorry.
No, why? Because Don Winslow, I think, or Don Bentley, they're both really pushing out and talking about a Drowning coming out. But I had I had texted her and I said, because I follow a lot of authors, I love talking to authors, and I said, I don't know, I fly a lot. I don't know if I really want to be on a plane called falling. And I said, all right, I'm going to do this. I'll, and she was very kind. She texted something back. And that's what I love about Twitter, is that I never would have found you, never would have found a lot of the people that I talk to. And it's just very nice that everybody's very open, especially in the author community, about thanking people for sharing images of their books or responding to tweets. I've found that community to be very, very receptive.
It is. And it's, I mean, because publishing is so hard. That's one of the things that I've found has been so great, is that the authors always look out for other authors. It doesn't matter if you're New York Times bestseller or you're an indie guy like me, because everybody knows how hard it is. And they also know that, if you make it, you're going to, when the readers are done with your book, they're going to be looking for the next book.
Yes.
So be nice to each other, because, they're going to you're going to recommend somebody, and they're going to go read that book.
Yep.
And, I want to just say something real quick to your audience. Always believe in yourself, always believe in your abilities, and don't doubt that you can do it, because you can. And just remember, like Les Brown says, it's possible. That's all you have to tell yourself, is that it's possible. Just start, and then you'll figure out the rest.
That's great. That's great, because that actually answers the question I was going to ask you, is what's the one thing you want people? No, it's great, because you jumped right there, because it was going to be, what's the one thing you want people to take out of this episode and this conversation? And that is a perfect thing, because there is so much self-doubt, and you have, it's a craft, you have to work at it. Everything is, but the fact is, if you believe in yourself, you'll be willing to try and to push yourself through it. So I really do. And I can't wait to really get into all of them. I started breezing through this one, the new one, and I said, ooh, wait a minute, I got to go backwards. So I got the other two coming. And like I said, I'm on planes all the time and in hotels traveling. My wife was even joking, saying, am I going to even see you this month? I'm like, I got to go. So I'm always looking for books. And that was the one good thing, is that there's 3. Because that's one of the things, when I first found, like, say, Jack Carr or Vince Flynn, or, I just finished Don Winslow's second book in his series, his trilogy. And now I'm going, oh, now I have to wait. Now I got to wait. The excitement of finding somebody that has 3 books is like, oh, good, I'm good for the next month or so. But then you go through the withdrawals of, like, when are they going to write something else again? So tell everyone how they can connect with you. Where should they go to get the book? I mean, I'm assuming it's everywhere, but where should they connect with you? What's the best place to connect with you? As I said, that I want to share this out, and we'll put all of this into the show notes as well. But where should they connect with you?
You can always connect with me on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. For Facebook, I just have a personal account. I have a business account, but personal is the best way to get a hold of me. Mm-hmm. Just friend me. And then on Instagram and Twitter, at Matt Scott Books, I answer messages from everybody. It doesn't matter. And you can always, email me through my website. I have a lot of, some of the trailers for the novels are available on my website that have gotten good responses. So check those out, and you can email me. And as far as where the books are available for print, it is Amazon only, at least for now, until somebody grabs it and gets it enough attention to get me a hardcover and an audiobook. But it is available on e-reader formats everywhere. So Apple, Kindle, Google Play, all of them. So the e-reader formats have been really good. And I'm fortunate enough to have, an audience that's really 50-50 between print and e-readers. And I've got one of the things that's been surprising for me is that I've got a good female audience. I got an email the other day from somebody who said they read book 2, then they read book 3, and they went back and read book 1, and they liked it. They said they liked it, as much as they would if they had read it in order. So
that's great.
you take the compliments where you can get them, right?
I think so. Listen, I'm just so happy that we ran across each other, that we connected, that you spent some time here. This has been great. I love conversations like this because they never know where they go, and they're just a lot of fun. So again, I appreciate you taking your time. So again, audience, make sure you go out and you start getting these books, right? And you know the drill. At the end of every episode, if you found value, please share it out. I know there's some people in your audience, in your network, that could benefit from our conversation today. Please make sure that you like it. As I said, love to hear your feedback. And the mere fact that you spend time with us today means the world to me. I know there's a lot of places that you can consume content. The fact that you stayed with us, that makes me happy. And so, as I say, at the end of every episode, you're in charge. But now you got a few new things from our favorite new author, Matt Scott here. He gave you a few tips to think about. Put them in your toolbox, pull them out when you need them, and I'll look forward to seeing you guys on the next episode. Again, Matt, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me, Glenn. I really appreciate it.